welcoming everyone here today, so you know who you are and why you're here. We're standing to present a flag that flew in Iraq, and through that flag, many have lost their lives. Okay, right on. Uh, right now, the uh, the adoption of a platoon in 2007, and I do have a picture of the platoon that sent us this flag. Actually, they brought it back, but while they were over there in Iraq, there were a group of men who served their country. They're heroes, and you can look at this later on. They're the heroes, just like the men and women that are buried here. At this time in appreciation, we want to thank Brian for coming today with his group, all of the people who stand before us, that we work together and continue against all the terrorism.
Hi, my name is Rick L. I was past president of Monsey Lions Club, involved with the American Legion in Spring Valley, Post 199, Moscow Post, and I'm representing veterans from Rockland County that appreciate the work done by the Scouts. It's a great job. There's been a lot of work done in this cemetery over the last 2 or 3 years. It was in a sorry state for about a year due to construction in the area. So in the last year, Brian Negrin and his troop and his Eagle Project has cleaned up the entire cemetery. The town of Ramapo put these fences up around here about a year ago. Brian's group did the plantings along the fences, cleaned up the whole cemetery, and this whole corner over here. Without their help, the Monsey Lions, which maintaining the cemetery for about the last 20 years by cutting grass and just keeping it looking decent. Without the Eagle Scout project, it wouldn't look like this today. And it's a great honor to have Scouts take care of the cemetery, and hope in the future that the community and the Scouts, younger people, will maintain this cemetery and other cemeteries throughout the county. Once again, I thank the Scouts, Negrin family, for all the work they put into this over the last 6 months. They did a wonderful job. Philip Dennis, who is the pastor of New Hope Church in Monsey. This is their cemetery, has been for 300 years?
Not quite. Going on, closing in.
Okay.
Let me just ask right off the bat, who here does not have a program and needs one? Does everyone have a bulletin for our event today? Okay, good. Well, my name's Philip Dennis, and I'm the preacher at New Hope Christian Church, just around the corner on Main Street. That's the Monsey Church. And where we're standing right now this morning is actually a church yard. But if you look around, there is no church here. And the reason for that is that it has moved. And I want to tell you a little bit about the history of this place and why the church is not here, why it's around the corner on Main Street. On June 11th, 1824, the Reverend James D. Demarest led a group of 68 families out of the brick church. It was a secession that was taking place within the denomination. And they established themselves as a new church right here, called the True Reformed Dutch Church of West New Hempstead. It's a bit of a mouthful. This land was donated to the church by one of its founding elders, a man named Garrett Servin, who had been an elder at the brick church. And they built a church meeting house right here on this property. This was the church yard. This is where the founding pastor, James Demarest, is buried, and many of the original elders and deacons. As I said, one of the founding elders of the church, Garrett Servin, donated this land. Not only was he an elder in the church, he was a veteran of the Revolutionary War. He was not only that, he was a presiding justice in the town from 1796 to 1806, and that's why he's known in the history books as Judge Servin or Judge Garrett Servin. He was the town clerk for Ramapo from 1809 to 1813, and he was the supervisor for the town of Ramapo in 1814, and he's buried here. Now, besides the founding pastor of our church, James Demarest, and Garrett Servant being buried here, as I mentioned, all the founding elders and deacons and other people are buried here as well. But Servant isn't the only Revolutionary War veteran buried here. The best known is a general by the name of Peter S. Van Orden. He fought not only in the Revolutionary War, when he was a young man at the rank of sergeant, but he fought also against England in the War of 1812, by which time he had been promoted to brigadier general and then finally to major general. Peter Van Orden was an orphan who enlisted at age 14, and he spent his life in the military. He was originally from northern New Jersey, from Bergen County, but he moved his family up here to this place that was then called Kakiat and settled here. He was given the task in the Revolutionary War of reconnoitering British trade lines in and around New York City and reporting back and trying to disrupt trade. But toward the end of the war, he was captured and remained a prisoner of war of the English for several years. But eventually he was released and continued his career in the Army. He also was a town supervisor for Ramapo from 1807 to 1809. He was a presidential elector, a member of the Electoral College in the 1816 election, in which James Monroe was elected the 5th president of the United States. James Monroe, incidentally, was a member of the Democratic Republican Party. Sounds like a nice group, doesn't it? Besides General Van Orden, Garrett Servant, there are a number of other veterans buried here. In the War of 1812, we have buried here Jacob Felter, John Mackey, John G. Servant, who was the son of Garrett Servant, Edward Taylor, and Peter C. Van Houten. Now, none of our Rockland men saw action in the War of 1812. We had a regiment of infantry, we had some light horse cavalry, and we had an artillery unit. And they were mostly stationed on Ward's Island in the East River between Manhattan and Queens, and then in what was then known as Harlem Heights. Today it's known as Morningside Heights in Manhattan. But they only served for 30 days, and then they were given leave to come home to harvest their crops, because otherwise the crop would be ruined. We have two men who are buried here who served during the Civil War. Neither of them saw action. These two men were Lewis H. Dusenberry and Charles Young. Now, Charles Young trained, he was young during the Civil War, and he trained at an armory in Viola, which at that time was called Mechanicsville. At age 16, after having trained in the armory, he traveled to Washington, D.C. to enlist in the Army of the North. He got there and was told that the war between the states had just ended, and so he came back home. But nevertheless, he did enlist, and so he was a veteran during the period of the Civil War. So this is a churchyard in which many church members and veterans are buried. But why isn't there a church here anymore? Well, there was a member of the church, also one of the elders of the church, named Levi Sherwood, who owned a general store on what is now Main Street, right up near the Nyack Turnpike, State Route 59. He was also the station agent for the Erie Railroad. And at this time, in the mid-1860s, just after the Civil War, Main Street did not exist. There was this crooked and winding road that ran between Saddle River and Laydentown. And Sherwood wanted to change that, so he bought all the property around his general store and planned for this road to come straight through, which is now Main Street. As part of that, he moved the church from this out-of-the-way place on the crooked road to what would then become the main thoroughfare running up through this part of the county, Main Street. So that's why our church there on Main Street, which was dedicated in August of 1869 and where we still worship on Sunday mornings at 11 o'clock, that's why it is where it is. And so this land has remained here. People continue to be buried here. There were a number of burials every decade, all throughout the 1800s and the early 1900s until about 1955. An elderly woman named Phoebe Swan was buried here. And I have records from our church board lamenting the fact that when she died, she was the last living link in the 1950s to the true Reformed Dutch Church of the late 1800s, as it was then called. But this property, because our church is small, we've always had a great deal of trouble maintaining this property. It's always been subject to vandalism. In the records of our church board, call the police because 17 headstones had been pushed over one night in 1953. There's a Journal News article from August 29, 1968 titled Monsey Cemetery Cleared. And it describes the efforts of what then was called the Museum of Spring Valley and Countryside to beautify and clean up this cemetery, which the article calls a triangular weed-grown patch of ground. And now as you look around you today, you see that it is no longer a triangular weed-grown patch of ground, it's rectangular, and there are no weeds here. And so we're grateful very much to the Negrin family for the work they've done to make it beautiful today. And so there is a church that continues even though it's no longer here. We have a country that continues to this day, free from tyranny, dependent on no other nation. We are united as a people, north and south, from whatever country we may come. The church continues its original message to let everybody know that Jesus Christ is the only Savior and Lord. And we will continue that message as long as we possibly can. And it's important for us, all of us, whatever our religion or background, as a nation, to remember the people who came before, the people who fought the hard fights, whether they were theological fights or military fights, to fight for the principles that matter the most, and to allow us today to live in freedom, to live and to worship as we see fit. So we're thankful for the work of the Negrins to keep this place looking good so that we can maintain this memory. And now I want to, there's a time for us to present some awards to Brian for his work. The minister, elders, and deacons and members of New Hope Christian Church have commissioned a plaque for Brian, and it says, in appreciation of his initiative and work to restore and beautify our historic cemetery, we present this plaque to Brian Negrin with our heartfelt gratitude. Commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. Proverbs 16:3. New Hope Christian Church, Monsey, New York, November 2011. I'll let Maybell present an award from the Monsey Ramapo Lions Club.
With great pleasure that we, Ramapo Monsey Lions, actually Monsey is the first name of our club, and we kind of added Ramapo because we thought we'd get more members. Not happening, guys. So and prove me wrong, or prove me right. Well, this plaque is honoring Brian Negrin, Eagle Scout candidate, Boy Scout Troop 78, in appreciation for the restoration of a Revolutionary War cemetery, spearheaded by a dedicated followed by a flag raising at the Monsey Historic Cemetery with an American flag flown in erect, November 5th, 2011, Monsey Ramapo Lions. I think I'd like to present to our good pastor. And it's the certificate that went along with the flag. And it's a copy of, but it's in tribute to the work that was done today. The flag flew over Iraq and in Baghdad International Airport, then was sent to a hospital and flew there, 2007. So,
and now we thought it would be appropriate after the flag raising to sing God Bless America. So the Boy Scouts, I believe, are going to raise the flag now.